Okay, I'm honored to invite our next speaker, Michael Rabin, from the Hebrew University and from Harvard. Michael received his PhD from Princeton in '56. He is a recipient of several prestigious awards, including, of course, the Turing Award in '76, the Israel Prize in '95, and the Ament Prize recently in '04. Michael is a member to several academies, including the Israel Academy of Science, the American Academy of Arts and Science, and the European Academy of Science. And he holds honorary degrees from 6 universities worldwide, including us, the Open University of Israel. Michael Rabin's research addresses fundamental questions in computing, randomization, and cryptography, and I think it's central to the education and research of each and every member of this room. So I'm honored to invite Michael to talk about secret, incoercible, and deniable bidding. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor, a pleasure to be here. I moved out away from the podium because of my outstanding height. If I would be standing behind it, you would only see my eyes. Somebody whom I admire once said, before I start talking, I would like to say a few words. So the few words I would like to say are in response to Judith Gal-Ezer mentioning Hardy, the mathematician Hardy. He wrote that book, which I think you mentioned, The Mathematician's Apology. And in it he said, I worked mainly on number theory all my life, because I was absolutely assured that this will never be applied anywhere. And then, lo and behold, in 1975, an efficient algorithm for primality was found, which then became the basis of most of modern cryptography, and Hardy is turning in his grave, having been, found wrong eventually. So I want to talk today about secret, incoercible, and deniable bidding, countering collusion in auctions. By the way, I wasn't sure whether I'll have to speak in Hebrew or in English, so I looked for translations of all of these terms into Hebrew, and I'll share one translation with you, which caused me a difficulty. I had to look it up in the Oxford Hebrew, English Hebrew, namely collusion, and that's knunia, a very nice word. But now I'm not going to use it because I'm speaking English. So let me explain all of these terms and give you a roadmap which way we are going. So consider an auction. There is an auctioneer, a seller, and there are people who participate in the auction. So consider an auction. There is an auctioneer, a seller, and there are bidders. So first of all, I want to explain what secrecy has to do here. Namely, especially in repeated auctions, consider, for example, auctioneering like the Fed Reserve does, auctioneering T-bills, or the federal government auctioneering drilling rights in the Gulf of Mexico. So the various bidders, for example, in the latter case, the oil companies have some private information about the potential of these sites. They did some preliminary drilling or whatever. And they are bidding, and they would prefer their bids not to be known to the competitors, so that the competitors are going to be at a disadvantage, not be at an advantage later on in competing. On the other hand, for example, the Fed Reserve people who do the T-bill auctions, and we spoke to these people, they announce the results. Who is getting what blocks of T-bills and so on, at what interest rates. They announce the results, and the bidders, there are about 20 or so banks participating, worldwide in these bids, the participants have to trust the auctioneer that the announcements are really according to the actual bids and to the rules of the auction. So that was the first problem that we, but many other people, addressed. Namely, we would like to have an auction and in general financial processes where people participate and then results are being announced and the correctness of the results is proved without revealing any actual values. And that has been dealt quite extensively, and I'm going to mention some of these. And in 2007, we here is yours truly and Chris and I'm sorry, I'm blocking. I'll come back to it in a moment. Wrote a paper which has a new method, a very efficient new method of great interest on its own for doing zero-knowledge proofs. And then we were able to give a very incredibly efficient solution for the problem of conducting an auction, announcing the results, proving the correctness, and keeping all bid values secret. And this new method, by the way, had another advantage. Zero-knowledge proofs were already, of course, known. But if you would try to explain to a financier, to an economist, that you translate it into a problem of three coloring of a graph and prove that the three coloring exists, his eyes, her eyes would glaze over and you would lose him immediately. In our experience, as you'll see, what we are doing, what we did is really understandable and convincing, and that's another very important advantage. Now the people who I worked with are Chris Thorpe, who was a PhD student of mine at Harvard, and Rocco Servideo, who was a Harvard PhD and is now at Columbia University. So that's part one. Now we come to the business of incoercible and deniable bidding. And here, the intention is the following. You can have, and in fact in many auctions, and that is a very big problem, there is collusion of participants in the auction against the seller. So all of us go, to bid, and then I and a few other scoundrels here, 5 people, who we consider ourselves probably to be the big guys who are going to make the biggest bids anyway, and we decide amongst ourselves who is going to bid what in order to lower the actual payment eventually. And then we have side payments amongst us, and each of us gains and the seller loses. Now, later on, by the way, the first business of secret, so that was done in 2007. In 2009, I spent half a year at Google. They are very interested in auctions and also in the issue of secrecy. And there, together with Yishai Mansour and Moti Jung, we took the 2007 work using the same basic idea, but enhancing it further greatly enhancing it further in terms of efficiency, and that was really, and other parameters, and that was very important. Now I come to the issue of collusions. And that represents very recent work together with Silvio Micali that was done essentially in December of 2011. And here the idea is the following, that even if some of us colluded against the auctioneer, the submission of the bids is done in a way that even though, let us say, Adi Shamir and I and a few other here, Tamir Tassa, decided I'll bid such and such, he'll bid such and such, he'll bid such and such, it's impossible to coerce us to actually submit the bids we agreed on. And later on, in the proof of correctness of the announced result, it is deniable for us, for me, say, to state whether I did or did not bid what we agreed upon. And that looks all completely impossible, and I'll show you how it is in fact possible. So now to enter into the actual work, let's say I concentrate on a vicary auction. There are n bidders, these are their bids, and in the vicary it's a second price auction. If X1 is the biggest bid and X2 is the second biggest bid, then B1 gets the item and pays X2. This was suggested by Vickery, who got a Nobel Prize for it, and it has certain advantages which I'm not going to enter into over highest price auction. Now, the bidders submit to the auctioneer sealed bids, which means simply encrypted. These are envelopes containing the value of the bid, encrypted by use of a key. And then we have the auctioneer, whom we also call evaluator prover in general. And at the end of the time for submitting bids, each one sends his key to the evaluator prover, to the auctioneer. Auctioneer opens the envelopes, determines who won and what he has to pay, and lets them know. But the bidders want to know the correctness of the announced result. At the same time, wish to keep their bids secret. To this end, we need to support evaluation of proofs of correctness, zero-knowledge proofs of correctness for predicates such as xi greater than xj. Okay. Now, existing zero-knowledge proofs, I'm going to give a very quick review and badmouth each of these and explain why what we are doing is. So the first one is proving that X is an L and in an NP language, or proving circuit satisfiability. So what is involved is taking, for example, these inequalities, expressing them in terms of bits, and then having a circuit which has the output xi greater than xj, 0, 1, and so on, and then proving the satisfiability of the circuit by these submitted values. By the way, everything we are doing is not even a pure zero-knowledge proof, because there are these inputs from the bidders, so it's actually even more general. Then, before we came, we also used in one paper homomorphic encryptions to prove statements about encrypted values. And then there is a method of multi-party computations. So there are 10 supposedly trusted people. We know that, for example, Wall Street firms, these investment banks are, of course, completely honest and trustworthy. So the values are being submitted by the bidders in distributed form. The players do the computation and announce the result. First of all, this is very slow. Second, very difficult to really explain this business of multi-party computation to financiers. And third, there is actually no proof of the correctness. Because, for example, maybe the reduction of the problem to the multi-party computation itself was erroneous. And then, you know, the people at Goldman Sachs immediately are going to catch the error there. Okay, so now our approach, and that goes back to R, Servideo and Thorpe to 2007. We work directly with numbers x, y, z, which are taken out of a finite field. But these are not large primes in terms of cryptography. In fact, even 2 to the 64 would be enough. And the reason we choose that is that these words fit into, you know, the processor. In 128 would be double precision. And working with these numbers is incredibly fast. You can do 1 billion operations per second. Now, so no need to go down to the bit level, etc. Now, a wide range of computations and zero-knowledge proofs of their correctness is encompassed within the concept or construct of generalized straight-line computations. So the computation has inputs, x1 up to xn, not necessarily bits, from p1 up to pn. There is somebody who is an evaluator and a prover. So first of all, he is going to do the straight-line computation, and then he is going to prove the correctness. And the form is x1 up to xn, and then there are xn plus 1 and so on. And these are the outputs. These are the outputs. And for all m greater than n, there exist 2 previous values such that xm is the sum of these values. Of course, mod p, we work in fp, or the product of these mod p, or xm is the truth value of the inequality. Is 1 if xi is less or equal to xj and 0 otherwise. Fine. So the evaluator prover is going to post the results, the outputs of the computation, and then he's going to post a zero-knowledge proof of the correctness of the results. And the proof of correctness can be checked by a verifier, verifiers, say in the auction, by each of the participants, by a judge or whatever, can act. In fact, in the original paper, we allowed only 1 proof. In the work we did at Google, did I say before Microsoft by mistake? No, I think I said Google. At Google, they were interested in having multiple proofs of correctness, and that's what we enabled there by an appropriate extension. Good. Now our magical solution. And if you don't understand what I'm going to say in the 2 or 3 coming slides, you really should get your money back and kick me out of the Open University. So the values are elements of ZP. And P is a small prime. And the operations are plus times mod P. Now the main idea is that every value is represented in a random way. So there is a random representation of x, which is capital X, a vector uv. uv are values in the field. And by definition, the value of the vector is u plus v mod p. Now, how do we get a random representation. And this is done by the bidders, for example, when they submit bids, and by the evaluator prover when he extends the submitted bids to a proof. Namely, you choose U at random, and then you take V as X minus U. So now, and then things are being submitted by a commitment, which these are closed envelopes if you wish. So the commitment to X is the commitment to U and commitment of V. And the point is that in the proofs, so Michael's 11th commandment is, you never reveal both coordinates of the same vector. And essentially, you either reveal all first coordinates of vectors, or you reveal all second coordinates. Wow, but then these are absolutely random numbers, so that information theoretically, nothing is being revealed. Information theoretically. So the evaluator prover needs to give zero-knowledge proof to statements such that three values which are posted by commitments, by random representation of vectors, that the value of X is equal to plus value of Y is equal to the value of Z, and the value of X times value of Y is equal to the value of Z, and also in inequality. I'll only describe, in order to stay within the time, I'll only describe how addition is being proved. So, good. So, oh no, I went back. I need to go forward. I'm still going back. I'm giving you not a zero-knowledge proof that I don't know how to use this. First of all, I want to say a word about the commitments. So if you want to be very pure, you use what's called Pedersen commitment by a group with intractable discrete log problem, blah, blah, blah. And then you can prove that what we are doing is information theoretically hiding and computationally binding. But I'm not one of the types who spends a lifetime, on refining such things. In practice, in the implementations we did, what we do, you use an encryption function, say a 128-bit key AES, and the commitment to a value U is that you choose a key and you calculate E, the encryption of U by K, using the key, and the decommit opening is to reveal K and reveal U, and then it can be verified that the computation gives you that value. And that's, again, incredibly fast. I think you can do about 1 billion AES encryptions per second or something like that. Good. So now, how is addition verified? So the evaluator user has posted on, let's say, some sort of secure electronic bulletin board, he has posted commitments. So these are the three random representations of lowercase x, lowercase y, and lowercase z. And he claims, these are posted by having 6 envelopes, so to speak, on the bulletin board. And he claims that what is hidden in the first pair of envelopes plus the value hidden in the second pair is equal to. Now, it's immediately seen it's not quite that x plus y is equal to z. But there exists a zero-value vector, r minus r, so that x plus y is equal to z plus r minus r. So now the evaluator prover, all of that is posted. He is now asked, challenged by the verifier to prove this equation. So he first of all reveals R. The verifier randomly chooses between 1 and 2. He sends the challenge. And if, for example, the challenge was the first coordinate, U1, U2, this is not U2 Brutus, but the value U2, U1, U2, U3 are being revealed. In the other case, the others are being revealed, the second. And then the verifier checks or verifies that U1 plus U2 plus U3 plus U1 plus U2 is equal to U3 plus R, of course, mod P. And in the second case, minus R. Now you see if the evaluator prover was lying, one of these two equalities will not hold. So his probability that the claimed equation is false and the verifier will accept is less or equal to 1/2. Maybe he's lying in both coordinates, in which it will never be accepted. Good. So now I'm going to do it very quickly, really. The example is, you take P. When I was a student at Princeton and I took probability from Feller, the famous Feller, he would say, let's choose a random number, 17. So here I'm choosing a random number, 17, which is also a prime. And then you have, 7, x plus y is equal z, mod p is 14. These are representations. What is being posted are these closed envelopes. The verifier, the evaluator prover posts 10 in the clear, and then either the first or the second are being opened. Let's say in the first case, the first envelopes are being opened, and that's being verified. It's clear. And that's how you should think about it, and this is how lowly financiers, are sort of convinced that this actually is true, works. Okay. Now, if there are a sequence of additions, by the way, I'm not going to do it here. I could reduce, we have two reductions. We have a reduction that reduces the proof of inequalities which we need just to additions, into additions. And then we have another one which uses multiplications and miraculously uses the algorithm of the efficient algorithm for representing a number as a sum of all squares. And this is faster, but the other one is more readily understandable. But I'm going to do neither. However, eventually, let's say we reduce inequalities to additions, then actually there are lots of additions that appear in the proof, in the posted proof, which expands, which is a translation of the claim. There are lots of additions, but you can check all of them simultaneously by deciding the verifier either open all first coordinates and of course have the corresponding R's, or open all second coordinates. If you go back to what I did before, you can see that the whole process, the proof reveals absolutely nothing about the value of the numbers. The same proof would be consistent for any other values which satisfy the claimed property. Good. All right. And now the verifier will accept in case that even one addition is false, the probability for that is less than half. It's not 1/2 times the number of things being checked. That's immediate, but I'm not. Now I'm going to, big sigh of relief here, I'm going to skip how multiplications are being verified, but also these games. Okay. So proving or verifying the correction of announced results, he receives and posts bids by commitments. A commitment to this vector is actually 2 envelopes. He needs to prove, inequalities like that. He creates a translation by one of the methods for proving, and then he poses, the verifier poses random challenges to reveal first or second, blah, 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 and then he checks what is being revealed to him. And if we use the first method, which is a little bit slower, using only additions, if what is being claimed is false, the probability that he'll accept is less or equal to 1/2. And if we used also multiplications and the quicker way by the sums of 4 squares, blah, 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 he will accept the auctioneer's claim if false, and the probability will be 3/4. Wow, being cheated with probability 1/2 or being cheated with probability 3/4 is pretty terrible, especially when millions or billions are being involved. Well, even financiers I spoke to immediately said, you simply have to do K-proofs. You simply have to do K-proofs. Yes, they are right. So the amplification is that the EP constructs and posts K-translations of, in general, the generalized straight line computation. And for every one of these translations, the verifier randomly and independently chooses to check for correctness of additions and so on, and so on. And then even if multiplications were involved, all of these are now independent, and the probability of accepting the posted computation results, for example, the announcement of the auction results, is less or equal to 3/4 to the K. And this is already, of course, you take K 100, and that's fine. That's fine. So, good. So now, incoercible. Now incoercible, and that represents work with Silvio, who is, by the way, one of the 3 initiators, of zero-knowledge proofs. But what we are doing is incredibly more efficient and also more understandable in this context than the original method. So every bidder, so I am going to show you very generally, quickly, how to do the submission incoercibly and undeniably. And of course, then also preserving absolute secrecy. So every bidder chooses an ID. And for the proof and verification, eventually, the AU will post K-translations. K-translations always in order to reduce the probability of cheating to 1/2 to the K or 3/4 to the K. And in the K-translations, there is going to be, he creates a permutation of the numbers 1 up to n, and the each translation consists of n, Nelly, of n triplets, where the first coordinate is the name of the bidder encrypted, and the second coordinator is a commitment to a random representation of the identity, and the third one is a commitment to a random representation of the bid. And now, in the challenges, challenges. And that is repeated a number of times, so eventually it's going to be, say, k squared. And now there is going to be the following. There is going to be either a challenge where for the translations it is being checked that the BI1 up to these are actually a permutation of the name, the same permutation in each translation of the names of the bidders. So all bidders are being present and each of them only once. Or there is going to be a proof. Now, here comes in the mystery. There is going to be a proof. Assume for a moment that actually these commitments were initially, the commitments initially submitted by the participants. Then the participants who are part of the collusion can be coerced to reveal, to open these commitments because they have submitted them. So the mystery is going to be, and I'll say a couple of words how to do that. The mystery is going to be that eventually in what he is posting, the participants don't know how to open these commitments. These commitments, these random representations and commitments were created for the proof eventually, were created by the auctioneer, by the evaluator prover. So there is a mystery. How do they know that he did not put here random values? Okay, but then there is going to be a proof of value consistency. You see, if we have k translations, so that we actually need a proof that the values hidden here and then the second and here and so on are all the same. To prove value consistency of such arrays is not hard. It's not hard. It's very similar to the proof of addition. I'm going to skip it because I want to get to the main point. But so then there is going to be we are going to have a number of translations, like of k translations. And each translation is being used either to reveal all the names or to reveal the value consistency. Or the translation is, this is not touched. These are being opened and the identities are on the table, but the identities are numbers like 11,235. And then there is a proof that the values here satisfy the claimed inequalities. But then this is only being proved with respect to some identity. And, okay. So now I'm almost at the happy ending. And I come to, and that was the main innovation by Mikali and yours truly, how, okay, so every bidder knows his identity and is assured and so on, and every bidder is assured that so on. But the bidders cannot open the posted commitments, and therefore there is complete deniability. Now, how is that being arranged? How is that being arranged? So let me talk about the identity. Let me talk about the identity, and with respect to the bid value, it's a little bit more complicated, but not much more complicated. The bidder meets with the auctioneer, and the auctioneer identifies him. They meet at our cafe in Herzliya under the cover of night. Oh no, of course it's done electronically by pre-agreed codes and so on. So the bidder, and this requires, of course, elaboration. So the auctioneer knows that he's talking to Goldman Sachs, to the representative of Goldman Sachs, who is also, okay. Now, the bidder reveals to the auctioneer the ID. That's before the closing of the auction. And the auctioneer prepares, let's say, 200 commitments to random representations of that ID. The auctioneer does it. And then the bidder, Goldman Sachs, chooses randomly 100 of those and says, open these. So he decommits. He reveals the key and blah, 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 he decommits. And all of those, of course, have to agree with the ID that he told, that he assumed vis-a-vis the auctioneer. If not all of them agree, then Goldman Sachs knows that not only he, but also the auctioneer is a crook and says, I'm not playing. But if all of them agree, then this is sampling here. Maybe your methods can be used. Then with very high probability, a considerable majority of the remaining 400 are going actually to hide, these pairs of envelopes are going to hide a random representation of the ID. And these are being used later on. So now the Goldman Sachs can truly claim, I cannot open these envelopes. I cannot, sorry. Now, it's a little bit more tricky with respect to where am I? It's a little bit more tricky. No. I'm really a klutz. So it's a little bit more, this is the copying. I'm almost at the end. Yeah, it's a little bit more tricky to see how the commitments to X, because if they meet before the closing and they play that game vis-a-vis XI, then the auctioneer knows the bid before the closing. Very bad. And that's counter to the interest of the bidder himself. So actually, and I'm going to say it, standing on one leg, collateral regel achat, what he does first is to submit a ZI. And this remains closed. And then they play together submitting a YI. And then the XI is the sum of these two. But the ZI is being opened only after the closing. And then a situation is being created where, again, the bidder, the player, is convinced with a very high probability, like what we had before, that actually the values are correctly represented and so on, and he truly can claim, in fact, he cannot open these envelopes. And therefore, he has complete deniability. And now, and that's my last, 45 minutes. That's my last word here. Now there is an analysis. How this complete secrecy can be used, and I'm in touch with people who do auctions, David Parks at Harvard and Moti Perry here in Jerusalem, how this complete secrecy frustrates collusions because of this complete deniability. And what they do is the colluders make side payments, and for example, in a Vickery auction, the auctioneer is going to pay a kickback to the second price. So he's not going to realize the full second prize, but he's going to realize 9/10 of the second prize. So that's essentially it. Thank you very much. Wow. Please, I mean, you have to test and see whether I really know what I'm talking about. Yes?
Colluding bidders will in fact know that it hasn't gone according to plan.
Pardon me?
Colluding bidders will in fact know that it hasn't gone according to plan.
Yes, correct.
So they might have deniability, but if it's a mob-run organization, they can take countermeasures.
Yeah, but they don't know against whom. Because, for example, the identity of there are also auctions where actually the winner, the one who got it, remains secret. And but let's take the second prize auction. Even the winner does not know who there is only an identity. Even the winner does not know who the second prize bidder was. So who got then a kickback from the they cannot enforce it because of the deniability. There are 2 points I failed to make, and that's no. What if the auctioneer is himself maybe coercible by, yes, what if the auctioneer is coercible by the mob? So you can have an implementation by a secure processor, by a black box like that, IBM, for example, creates. All the bids and so on are going into the black box, into the secure processor, and the secure processor does all these games and produces the proof and posts only the proof and tells the winner that he won and how much he has to pay, and he is convinced of the correctness. Now, there is a very interesting point that if you are using this secure processor, you definitely want to have a clear, understandable proof of correctness. Because maybe, for example, the inside of the box was misprogrammed. So, I have to go on, but you can think about that. And that gives complete and absolute secrecy. And possibly also, for example, in the mob not collaborating with the auctioneer. And now I want to, and I forgot the results. So by our method of homomorphic encryption, only secrecy, not non-coercibility. In the old method, preparing a proof, it took 800 minutes to prepare the proof. In the new method, 2 milliseconds. In the old method, verification took 30 seconds, half a minute. Here it takes 40 milliseconds. That's downloading, not... and the verification took 160 minutes, 2 milliseconds. For Google, for example, this incredible lightning speed in view of the value of the auctions, the volume of the auctions they perform. This is actually very, very meaningful. You also can think about the fact that in the case of Google, not every auction is going to be verified, but only upon demand. And actually, data to be stored in order to enable verification of an auction half a year from now is absolutely minimal. So these are practical aspects that we also incorporated, not part of the very pure theory. Okay, now I really said everything. Thanks again.